Hello and welcome to CSC-460-660. My name is Keyvan Shahrdar. I am a professor of computer science at LSU Shreveport. In this segment, we're going to talk about Git and GitLab while using GitLab. First of all, we want to learn how to start using Git on the command line and some of the Git terminology that goes along with it. So let's go ahead and get started. So first, Git is an open source distributed version control system. GitLab is built on top of Git. You can do many Git operations directly in GitLab. However, the command line is required for advanced tasks, like fixing complex merge conflicts or rolling back commits. For a quick reference of Git commands, download a Git sheet. So here's the Git sheet. And this is very handy to have because it allows you to, first of all, how do you log in? How do you start a project, etc. And you know how to do day-to-day jobs, and how do you go about branching and reviewing your work and all those things. So definitely take a look at that. For more information about the advantages of working with Git and GitLab, you could watch a video, GitLab Source Code Management Walkthrough video, and learn how GitLab became the backbone of the world line development environment. So let's talk about a little bit about the Git terminology so you get a little familiar with it. So there is what's called a repository. In GitLab, files are stored in a repository. A repository is similar to how you store files in a folder or directory on your computer. A remote directory reflects the files in GitLab. A local copy refers to the files on your computer. So you're going to have a remote repository, which is going to be online on the remote repository in GitLab, and one on your local copy in your actual laptop or desktop. Often the other word for repository is shortened to repo. In GitLab, a repository is contained in a project. Okay? So what is a fork? When you want to contribute to someone else's repository, you make a copy of it. This copy is called a fork. The process is called creating a fork. When you fork a repo, you create a copy of the project in your own namespace. You then have write permissions to modify the project files and settings. For example, you could fork this project, and this is a GitLab.com sample project, into your namespace. You now have your own copy of the repository. You can view the namespace in the URL, for example, your gitlab.com/your namespace sample project. Then you can clone the repository to your local machine, work on the files, and submit changes back to the original repository. Difference between download and a clone. So let's get that clear so everybody understands this clearly. To create a copy of a remote repository's files on your computer, you can either download or clone the repository. If you download it, you cannot sync the repository with the remote repository on GitLab. Cloning a repository is the same as downloading, except it preserves the Git connections with the remote repository. You can then modify the files locally and upload the changes to the remote repository on GitLab. You also have a pull and push. After you save a local copy of a repository and modify the files on your computer, you can upload the changes to GitLab. This is referred to as pushing to the remote because you use the command git push. When the remote repository changes, your local copy is behind. You can update your local copy with the new changes in the remote repository. This is referred to as pulling from the remote because of your command git pull. So there are some prerequisites. To start using GitLab with Git, complete the following tasks. You have to create and sign into a GitLab account, which everybody should have done that by now. open a terminal or a command prompt. You have to install Git on your computer, which we did already. But if you haven't, please go ahead and get it installed. Configure Git and choose a repository. To open the terminal, to execute Git commands on your computer, you must open a terminal, also known as a command prompt, or a command shell or command line. There are some options. So if you're a Mac user, this is what you need to do. If you're a Windows user, this is what you need to do, or a Linux user. But all the terminology is the same for whatever platform you are using. So if Git is already installed in your computer, by opening a terminal and running this command. So you could just type in git dash dash version and it should give you the version number if your Git is already installed. If your computer doesn't recognize Git, you must install Git. After you install Git, run the Git version to confirm that it's installed correctly. So let's configure your Git. So you're going to have a Git repository for GitLab for your LSU username email address, and you're going to have it for your student username. So make sure that you enter this information in. So you're going to put in the git config dash dash global user.name and then your username, whatever username you have in GitLab. And they have to be inside of the quotation marks. Then you want to submit your email address, and that's git config global user.email and your email address, which should be an lsus.edu email address. To check the configuration, you could run git config global list, and that will give you the information that you are going to be sending. So, for example, let's go ahead and try that. I'm going to expand this just a little bit so you guys could see. So here I'm going to go in git config global user.name, and then mine is Professor Shahrdar. So I just put in my username, and then here let me do git config global user.email, and let me open this up more so everybody could see. And I'm going to put in Shahrdar. Now you see this one I misspelled it, so let's go ahead and fix this. Professor. Let's do insert. So I just fixed it. All I did is I just re-entered the information. So then I do git config global list. And this will list what the user.name is and what the user.email is. So that's how you know that you have it done correctly. So now what we want to do is we want to choose a repository. Okay, so what we're going to do is we will go to GitLab, which here's GitLab, and I'm going to go into the project. So this is the project. Then we are going to clone, and this is where we're going to get it from. So you just click clone, and you copy this area right here, because we're cloned with SSH. So this is the way we do it right there. And so let's clone with SSH. So as you could see, we just want to go git clone, and then git at GitLab project app 1. So that's the name of the project. So let's go ahead and hit enter. And we are cloning. Enter a passphrase. So it cloned the project. So if I go ahead and hit dir, you should see the project here, which is project app 1. You can see it right here. This is what got cloned into here. I do want to mention, so you see how this here asked me for my passphrase. So in order to do that, we had to copy the SSH string into GitLab. So just make sure that you go to, in the upper right hand corner, you go to edit profile, and here you're going to see SSH keys, and here's where you're going to get the this is where you're going to put the key for your SSH string, and you will find it, and let me show you here. So you are here. If you do cd.ssh, it goes into a hidden folder that's named SSH, and here's where you're going to find all of the keys, and it's the key was a .pub. But in order for you to get this key, you need to generate one. And here is how you generate the keys. So you type in SSH keygen and this information here, and that will generate the key for you. And comments, so in comments, just type in LSUS or something to that effect, and that's what will get your keys generated. And then so you could type in Notepad. Let's see, ID ed to .pub, opens up Notepad, and you copy this. You copy this, and you would put it into your GitLab right here, and you will see it'll say title LSU other, and you add the key, and then you'll have all your keys listed right here. So that's what you have to do beforehand in order for GitLab to work with whatever desktop you are or laptop. Remember, if you change laptops or you change desktops or you go to a new workstation, you're going to have to do this part again, because that's the way you're going to be able to communicate with GitLab. So this is as far as we go with GitLab in this presentation. In other presentations, we will actually look at this Git sheet, and we will talk about branching model and being able to review your work and tagging known commits, etc. So those are things that we want to learn. I'm going to put all these things up on Moodle so you can go ahead and take a look at it. But in the meantime, remember, you could always communicate with me. Feel free to send me an email or give me a call. My email is kshahdar, uh, that's without the R, or actually keyvan.shahrdar@lsus.edu. You could call or text at 318-453-8082. Have a great day, and remember, communicate with me if you have any questions.